I'm Ben Knapp, Executive Director at ICAT, and really excited about today's talk. Many times the discussion of arts integrative research involves how artists can partner to expand our view of the world through new ways of representing data. As those of you that know who follow ICAT and Playdates, arts integrative research has many other facets as well. And one rapidly growing area of arts integrative research is the creation of virtual environments to help learn more about the world around us. In this talk today, we will learn about how the study of veterinary medicine can be enhanced by creating a gloved interface that is paired with a physical model, as well as allowing for touch sensation during bovine palpation while students view the virtual reality animal model. The project today is led by two researchers from Virginia Tech Library, Jonathan Bradley and Max Ofsa. Jonathan is the head of studios and innovative technologies there at the library. He assesses new technologies such as 3D printing, virtual reality, and IoT devices, and designs library services around these technologies. Max is the 3D Design Studio manager. The 3D Design Studio provides free 3D printing workshops and 3D design and printer consultation for all library patrons. And just as an aside, that's one of the really neat features of the library is at Virginia Tech is one of the first universities to allow students to basically send their 3D printing jobs over to the library and have those printed day and night. So Max and Jonathan, I'll turn it over to you to start with a quick video.
Hi, I want to thank Ben for that introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Haptic Cow project and start with the problem we were trying to solve. So in the libraries, we currently have some projects that are VR related that are sort of tied to this one. We call them the VR Animals projects, where we're working with VetMed to create some virtual reality experiences that have scanned models of animals, and you can go through and do anatomy instruction. But in our discussions with VetMed, and particularly Michael Napier over there, we found that one of the things they really wanted was to bridge the gap between these virtual models and the instruction that they do. Because there was, as identified, a sort of a core problem that exists in like veterinary medicine, where there's a period of time between when students are sort of first learning to interact with animals and working with live animals, where there was sort of a gap between that very lo-fi sort of instruction versus this working with real animals. So they had hoped that virtual reality could be the thing that fills that gap. So we had talked about the potential of a haptic model to help improve one of the most important aspects of bovine medicine, which is bovine palpation. So during bovine palpation, it's very hard to assess as an instructor the success of the process. So the hope is that the VR model will help students with the anatomy, but the idea might be that using a haptic model could give them feedback that the instructor could also witness. So we set out to build a haptic model to tie this virtual model that was existing as a separate VR project to something that the students could touch. And they were already doing this sort of work previously. They have, they call them birthing Bessies. They're these physical boxes that have silicone molds in them and are intended to mimic the reproductive tract of most bovine. And the students are used to doing a lot of their instruction on these models. And the idea would be that we could get a one-to-one parity between the virtual model of the cow and these physical models that students were used to using. So we set out to solve this problem, and we ended up getting this grant from ICAT to purchase some of the initial hardware. So one of the first strategies that we took was to build an actual glove. This glove, if any of you are old school gamers, is very much like the old Nintendo Power Glove. It actually even uses some of the original sensors and stuff, not the original ones that were in those gloves, but that type of sensor. So we bought just a physical, like skin tight glove. And we purchased a series of these, which are our little flex sensors. You can see they bend, and they're very simple, very cheap. And the nice thing is, as they flex, the more they bend, you get more resistance across them. So you can plug that into a microcontroller, you can get a reading back. We got them in different sizes. So we got enough for fingers against the gloves and also the thumb. And that was to track the opening and closing of the fingers, because a part of the bovine palpation process is actually moving your fingers and maneuvering between the organs. And so we wanted the representation of the student's hand to have finger articulation. The other side of this portion of the project was actual hand tracking within this physical model. So if you've ever worked with VR headsets, many of them have external trackers that you can attach to things. So HTC has the little Vive trackers. Those are too bulky, though, for this particular scenario. To attach it to the hand, especially as it's going through this model, would prove too much. So we found a company that actually sells within one of those Vive trackers, and inside the headset itself, there are dozens ultimately of these little tiny IR sensors. And we found a company that sells them individually. So I'm going to hold this up to the camera a little bit so you can see it. So it's a very tiny little thing. The goal was to attach some of these to the hand, the glove itself, sew them in using some conductive thread, which we also got, and see if we can get it to actually track against using some of the standard technology. Because one of the goals that VetMed had for the project was that it would be low cost. Many of the instruction materials that they have cost a great deal. So we were also, in addition to trying to create something that didn't really exist, trying to lower the cost of some of the things that they were dealing with and having to purchase over and over. So these sensors also were pretty cheap. Ultimately, we were able to get these tracking against the glove, but we started to run into a handful of problems related to that. I have a student worker who was being paid through partially the grant. He was able to attach some of the sensors to the glove, tie that all in with the little control board. So all the sensors have a little place you can hold. I think it's about 40 on this little control board. And the goal was to run the sensor wires up the arm and sort of attach it to the back of the shoulder. The student was able to get that and get it tracking, but what he found was, even though we gotten sort of skin tight gloves, we weren't able to keep a rigid body. So the fabric would move enough and the sensors would shift slightly, and it was just enough to sort of break the tracking that the system had assigned to it. So then he worked on creating an actual rigid body in the hopes that we could attach the sensors to it, and it would be sort of out of the way enough that we could do the actual hand tracking. So I'll actually screen capture the screen sharing. I think they'll turn it on here in a second. So I'll show you the model here in just a moment for the actual creation of this thing. So this is the model he made. Its intention is to actually go across the palm of the hand and around the back. And you can see he's built in slots, one in here to make sure it fit particularly well, because this was an earlier model, that will have the IR sensors, these little guys, embedded in it. And the goal was to attach this piece to the glove around the palm and the back of the hand and use that as a tracking point. So that was a thing we were working on. We 3D printed multiple models, and he was fairly happy with the tracking, and he was figuring out how to put more of those sensors on this particular model in his design right around the time the pandemic hit, and he got sent home, and a lot of the project had to be put on hold. But there were more aspects of this project that were sort of going on at the same time. And I'll jump back here to sort of my face view. So in addition to this, we were building a physical model. So we also bought some sort of T-frame, which we have in the university libraries, and we're sort of waiting to build it because we don't want to have to store it for months and months and months until we're ready for it. So we sort of tried to build this in a hierarchical way, like let's build the things that we think are the most challenging first, and then things that are maybe more obvious to us how to build a box out of T-frame, we'll build later once we're ready to that and we don't have to store it for a long time. But even during that time, there was also scanning, because VetMed had asked us to create these silicone molds that they use in these. And I'm going to pass it on to Max Ofsa, who is going to talk a little bit about the scanning work he did related to the project.
So my task has primarily been to provide the models for the, like Jonathan said, silicone molds of internal organs that the end user, in this case vet med students, would actually be feeling with their physical hand, and then hopefully our tracking is one-to-one with our VR space, so they could kind of have superpowers, X-ray looking through the cow model in their VR headset and feeling a representation at the same time. Currently, the way they do this is with some synthetic foam models that are, not very real to life in their styling. They just, the foam and sponge is not exactly the same as, flesh, certainly, but silicone is just another step. And there are some silicone molds over there. We started our process by 3D scanning the apparatus that they currently have and getting kind of a baseline of what that looks like. And the primary piece of interest was shown in the video. There was the uterus of the cow, because that's the palpated piece that of main interest. The model we have that we've kind of started building from that is that foam model. And if you're not familiar with the anatomy, it's not a great representation. So we had been working with VetMed to actually scan real organs, not live, obviously, but they have a mode of plasticizing organs to get them this more natural state of being. And then that model would be, instead of like an artist rendition of an organ, would be a scan directly of a real cow organ. And that's where we were going to start with that. Build those to scale from 3D scans of actual organs. Probably bore out some sections for sensors, so that they can identify inside our VR space where they're being touched and how they're being manipulated, hopefully relatively accurately. But for the most part, like Jonathan said, the more complicated portion of this is really getting our haptic pieces working and getting them integrated. So once we have models, printing silicone molds, is kind of old hat for us, again, going to get it set up. And of course, our erector set rig that from the outside will not look as realistic as hopefully our VR setting will look. Uh, yeah, so we've got a basis started and a clear line of direction for it. But yeah, like many departments, we've been hit by setbacks during this time for the pandemic. So
Yeah. So we've made good progress. We mentioned a couple times the coronavirus sort of put a hurt on this project. But it's still sort of ongoing. In terms of the progress that's been made, we've been able to sort of start a proof of concept. And that was really one of our goals from the outset, was to learn whether or not this particular method was going to be a successful method, because there were concerns even from the beginning. And we did test other things along the way. Like I have a sensor right here that is actually, it's a flex sensor for your arm. And we tested this out, ultimately found that it wasn't nuanced enough. It only really did like closed fist versus open fist. But we did come to some conclusions and have some ideas for moving forward. We're still working on the glove, and the student wants to sort of finish off his model and finish the sensors, because if nothing else, the idea of these individual sensors and being able to get them to track using existing VR technology could prove useful for the project down the road, regardless of whether we use the actual physical glove or not. So he's still working on that project, and is getting sort of, now that campus is back, getting started on that again. Some of the future things and the concerns that we ended up having from the project, though, are there's a pretty good chance the glove idea isn't going to work. One, the glove adds another layer between the student's hand and the things they're actually inspecting. And part of the concern of that is it's a pretty nuanced task. I've been told the things they're actually feeling for on the cow is sometimes as small as like a bean or something like that. And so these levels of fidelity are sort of important. Some other aspects that make the whole process a little bit more difficult is the addition of the rigid body across the glove makes going through this silicon model of these organs problematic. We have concerns about whether or not the glove would stand up to long-term exposure doing this over and over and over through an actual in-person testing model. We also just have concerns about gloves as a instructional tool, because you got to have a right hand and a left hand. You got to have small, medium, large gloves, and at that point you've already reached 6 various gloves that could go wrong. Something could break on them, sensors could fall off and stuff like that. And ultimately, looking at it, that seemed like that could end up being a pretty big barrier that would make people not want to adopt this. The other, and probably the most concerning for us and for the instructors over at VetMed, is the potential addition of false positives in the instruction process. So in addition, so part of the bovine palpation process is moving organs around. So the organs themselves need to be tracked in VR as well. So the intention was to use some of these little sensors on the organs as well, so that they would also have a one-to-one parity. So a student could lift up a part of the uterus and see that lift happen in the VR space at the same time. And so part of the problem, though, is if we attach these little sensors are like some of the things, they're about the size of some of the things the students are often looking for. And if a student runs their hand over one of these sensors, it could prove they think they found something when maybe they weren't supposed to find something, or they were supposed to find something somewhere else. And that would ultimately hurt instruction, which is definitely not the goal of any sort of technology like this that we're bringing in. So we're currently looking at other potential options. The one we're thinking about pursuing more in detail would be sort of a volumetric capture. So we've gotten over at the library and we check them out, make them available, but we also have them in some of our spaces. These little Azure cameras, they do volumetric capture. They do sort of real 3D environments. We think these could be a potential solution, and that's sort of our next step, is to get our student workers testing hand tracking through a 3D model, and potentially could we track design specific models using the cameras that are on those little Azure cameras to track in 3D space in real time, especially if we could rely on things like color, which the camera does do. So that's sort of the future of the project, and where we intend to take it from here. It's been a lot of fun going through, and there were definitely parts of the project that I think Max and I have talked about. We didn't expect, like when we started working for Virginia Tech, that we were going to be doing these sorts of things. But I think that's what I really enjoy. And I think Max does too, is like these weird projects that come out of left field, and you get to do something that you never thought you were going to get tasked with doing. So I think we're getting close to the end of my sort of talking period. So we may jump over to questions.
Sure. We do have some questions in the inbox there. If there are folks watching who have questions, please do submit them in that using the link on the video. So one question that this person says, we've got awesome work and an exciting project. And out of curiosity, why not use any of the off-the-shelf haptic gloves? What was gained in terms of design, education, interface, et cetera, by building one yourselves?
Yeah. So we did look at off-the-shelf haptic gloves. So part of the concerns were many of them ones that we saw that we could buy off the shelf covered the fingertips, and they covered them with silicone, which was a concern, and that was to facilitate the gripping. So a lot of them are designed with like a cap that goes over the top of the fingers, and then that pulls the stretching. And so that's part of why we decided to try to sew it in so we could avoid that. We had also considered cutting the fingers off of these gloves, the fingertips off of them, because we knew that the fingers were an important aspect of this. Another big thing was cost and licensing. So one of the goals that VetMed has had for this project is that we were going to hopefully produce a patent for this design that could be sold to other veterinary medicine colleges. Hopefully design would be a lot cheaper than some of the other things that they're being sold. And that money would be fueled to further the VR animals project and development on that, because they view that as a long-term goal. It has a lot of sort of backing from the veterinary medicine community. And I really appreciate this, they understand that long-term support for a VR project is an ongoing cost. And so they were trying to mitigate those costs. And so the potential of like how much those gloves would cost and having enough of them for selling this as an actual end user product and licensing them from the original creators of those posed a bit of an issue. So we were sort of asked, well, could we make our own thing, and let's try that instead.
Great. We love to see this kind of innovation happening on campus. Another question that's in is, we're having a lot of conversations now about how people can collaborate across distances. You all have talked about how COVID has impacted your work. Mm-hmm. And immersive environments are one of the ways that we do that. But the first complaint is always that we can't interact with actual objects. Mm-hmm. For this project, would it be possible to distribute multiple copies of the model, the physical model, to multiple sites and have teams participate in collaborative learning across distance? And how well do you think that might work? That's throwing it out there.
Yeah. So I think it would be a combination of things there. The glove was intended. So when we were doing the research, like we were looking to, a lot of this sort of instruction and some of the people who could benefit from it the most are in underdeveloped countries where farming and bovine medicine is still a huge, it's hugely valuable, and its cost can sometimes hurt those communities. So our hope was whatever we built would be, you could ultimately build one yourself. So like VetMed's target is like other veterinarian schools. And then there's also sort of this like open technology access, cheap parts thing that could translate to some of these other places. So I think the ultimate goal would be like, we could build some sort of system and use a potential glove, and people could build one of those themselves. And then the 3D models and stuff could be 3D printed, which 3D printers are becoming more and more accessible. So to a certain degree, yes, you could distribute the 3D models. The one thing to note, I don't know if I think the video shows the actual uterus scan that Max did. That's actually a pretty large object, so it would take a little while to print that, and you probably have to break it into chunks for the actual printing process. But that is one of the goals, is that being able to distribute some of these things and do so openly in a way that could be used for instruction could be an aspect of the project. There would be a lot to sort of tie together, and I think that would be one of the challenges, but not out of the realm and of possibility, I guess.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks.
One last question we have time for here, and we'll have to do it pretty quickly. This is a tool for teaching students, of course, who are going to go on to perform these tasks on real animals. Has anybody used the tool and then gone on to use the tool, not use the tool, use the tool themselves, and then gone on to do this work on a real animal? And have you gotten feedback on that yet?
No, we're not to that stage yet. I mean, we're still facing the problems of like the glove and actually it being a good instructional tool and overcoming that. So the goal is sort of down the road to eventually have this actually go over to VetMed. We're waiting to build the actual physical box until we're sure it's ready to go to VetMed so that they can store it instead of us, I guess, which they have places to store and they do this instruction anyways. And so we're still in those early stages, and I think we'll get there, but it'll probably still be a little while.
Sure. Lex, it's exciting to be part of this kind of bleeding edge. We are out of time, so I will just remind everyone that I want to thank Jonathan and Max for being here this morning. This is a great project, and thank you for sharing it with us. Also, all of the previous ICAT Playdates and this one will be available on the ICAT webpage and also on our YouTube channel. And please just smash that subscribe button, and we'd love to see you next week. There's more coming up then. Thanks, everybody.